Welcome back to Western Flavors, your home for the stories you love. We're so glad you're here with us as we continue the journey of the Fleming Bartlett family. If you enjoy our stories, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. In our last episode, an overwhelmed and heartbroken Amy reached her breaking point. Feeling completely isolated, she made a desperate call to Ty's mother, Lily, who immediately insisted she fly to Vancouver for a much-needed escape. There, in the safety of Lily's home, Amy confessed everything: the pain of Jack's death, the crushing weight of the will, her family's betrayal, and her confusing, disastrous confrontation with Nathan. But instead of the judgment she expected, Amy received a shocking blessing. Lily, drawing from her own painful past, advised Amy that Ty would want her and Lindy to be happy above all else, and gave her permission to move on. The episode ended with Amy on the plane home, armed with a new clear-eyed resolve to build a future for her daughter and a new, more open perspective on Nathan. 30,000 feet above the snow-capped peaks of the Rocky Mountains, Amy Fleming felt a sense of peace for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Below her, a sea of brilliant white clouds stretched to the horizon, a soft, clean slate that mirrored the state of her own heart. The trip to Vancouver had been more than a respite, it had been a release. Lily's words, her unexpected and profound blessing, had lifted a weight of guilt she hadn't even realized she was carrying. Her duty wasn't to be a lonely, perfect guardian of the past. Her duty was to build a happy, secure future for Lindy. Her thoughts inevitably turned to Nathan. The anger she had felt was still there, a low, simmering coal. His arrogance, his dismissiveness, his cold corporate vision for her home, it was all still infuriating. But Lily's perspective had given her a new lens through which to view him. Separate the man from the business plan. The man was ambitious, yes, but he was also present. He was stable. He was kind to her daughter. And he, in his own flawed, frustrating way, had been trying to offer a solution, not just wallow in the problem. She wasn't ready to forgive him, not by a long shot, but she was, for the first time, ready to talk, to listen, to see if there was a bridge to be built between his world and hers, for Lindy. A small, hopeful smile touched her lips as she stared out the window at the endless sky. She was flying home to a war, but for the first time she felt like she might have a strategy that wasn't just about defense. At that exact moment, 2,000 miles below on the winding roads outside of Hudson, Nathan Price was also thinking about strategy, but his was of a very different kind. He drove his truck with a focused, impatient energy, his jaw set, his eyes cold and calculating. The disastrous dinner had been a tactical error. He had misjudged Amy's sentimentality, underestimated her stubborn attachment to the past. His direct approach had failed. It was time for a new one. He had been waiting for an opportunity, a moment when Amy was vulnerable or distracted, and her sudden, impulsive trip to Vancouver was the perfect opening. She was unreachable, incommunicado for the next several hours. A perfect window. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over Tim Fleming's contact number. He knew he was taking a risk, but if he played this right, he wouldn't just be a helpful neighbor anymore. He would be an indispensable ally. He pressed the call button. Tim answered on the second ring, his voice gruff and impatient.
"What do you want, Price?" "Tim, I'm glad I caught you. I know things are tense right now, but I think we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about. My daughter has lost her mind, and my other daughter is letting it happen." "That's exactly why we need to talk,"
Nathan said, his voice smooth and reasonable.
"Amy is on a plane home from Vancouver as we speak. She just spent 2 days with Lily. Now, I have a lot of respect for Ty's mother, but we both know she's not the most practical person. Who knows what kind of sentimental ideas have been put into Amy's head? I think it's crucial that we have a unified front, a clear strategy before she gets back."
He let the words hang in the air, a carefully baited hook. He was framing himself as Tim's ally, as a fellow soldier in the war against Amy's sentimentality. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Tim was suspicious by nature, but Nathan's logic was undeniable. He was worried about what ideas Lily might have given Amy.
"What are you proposing?" "A meeting. You, me, and Lou, somewhere private, Maggie's, in half an hour? I think I have a solution that will be beneficial for all of us, especially for you and Lou."
The final sentence sealed the deal. Tim's own attempts to reason with Lou had been stalling. Maybe this third party, this man who had his own connection to Amy, could be the key.
"Fine, we'll be there."
Half an hour later, Nathan was sitting in a quiet corner booth at Maggie's, a cup of coffee in front of him. He had chosen the time perfectly. It was the mid-afternoon lull, the diner nearly empty. He watched as Tim and Lou entered, their expressions wary, their body language a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. They slid into the booth opposite him.
Nathan, Tim said this was urgent.
It is.
He said, his tone grave and sincere. He looked at them both, his expression one of shared profound concern.
I'm worried about Amy, and I'm worried about the future of Heartland.
He let that sink in, aligning himself with them, making this their common problem.
I tried to talk to her the other night. I presented her with a comprehensive business plan to get the ranch out of debt and secure its future. A plan that, by the way, would have ensured you both had a significant profitable stake in the new enterprise.
Lou's eyes narrowed with interest. Tim leaned forward.
She rejected it, out of hand. She called it a hostile takeover. She's so blinded by her grief for Jack and her emotional attachment to the past that she is actively choosing to let the ranch fail rather than see it change.
He was telling their own version of the truth back to them, validating every frustration they had felt.
Her trip to Vancouver to see Lily right now only confirms my fears. She's seeking emotional validation, not practical solutions. When she comes back, she will be more dug in than ever.
He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial tone, his expression one of grim resolve.
The way I see it, we have a common problem, and I believe I have a common solution.
Tim and Lou exchanged a quick, uncertain glance across the table. Nathan's tone was confident, conspiratorial, the tone of a man proposing a business deal, not meddling in a family crisis. Tim, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward, his initial suspicion giving way to intrigue.
I'm listening.
Nathan held their gaze, his expression a carefully crafted mask of sincerity and shared concern. He knew he had to play this perfectly. He had to build a foundation of trust before he could present his true, audacious plan. He started with Lou.
Lou, if I can be candid, I was shocked when I heard the terms of the will.
He paused, letting the statement land.
You have built a business empire. You're the mayor of this town. Your understanding of finance, of management, of strategy, it's unparalleled in this valley. For Jack to overlook your qualifications, to put the entire weight of a multi-million-dollar failing enterprise on Amy's shoulders. Frankly, it was an irresponsible decision.
He wasn't just agreeing with her, he was validating a core, painful feeling she hadn't even dared to voice herself. The feeling of being fundamentally unappreciated, of her years of hard work and success being dismissed in favor of Amy's intangible gift. A flicker of bitter satisfaction crossed her face.
He was sentimental in his old age.
He was.
Nathan agreed, his voice full of feigned sympathy.
And that sentiment, while lovely, is now a direct threat to everything he built, and to your own family's security.
He then turned his attention to Tim, shifting his approach.
And Tim, you saw this coming. From the moment Jack passed, you were the only one thinking about the practical realities. You were trying to protect your daughters, to protect your granddaughter's future. It's a father's instinct. But your concerns were dismissed as greed when they were actually about responsibility.
Tim straightened up in his seat, a look of vindication on his face. This man understood him. He wasn't some soft-hearted fool like the rest of them. He was a realist.
That's what I've been saying all along. She's running the place with her heart. A ranch doesn't run on heart, it runs on a balance sheet. Exactly. And right now, that balance sheet is a disaster. I'm a rancher too. My own property borders Heartland. I have a vested interest in seeing the land in this valley managed properly, in seeing its value protected. When I look at Heartland, I don't just see a struggling ranch. I see an institution, a cornerstone of this community, being mismanaged into the ground, and that affects all of us.
He had successfully positioned himself not as an outsider, but as a fellow stakeholder, an ally who shared their concerns and their frustrations. He was one of them.
Amy is a wonderful person. Her gift with horses is something I've never seen before. But her stubborn refusal to look at the hard facts is going to be her downfall, and yours.
He let that sink in, a cold, hard truth that they both already believed. He was simply giving voice to their own worst fears.
So what are you saying, Nathan? We know all this. We've tried talking to her. It's like talking to a brick wall.
Because you're her family. She expects you to disagree with her. But I'm in a different position. I'm her friend. She was, until recently, beginning to trust me.
The subtle reminder of his now fractured romantic connection with Amy was a calculated move, meant to show them that he had a unique, alternative path to influencing her.
She's not a businesswoman. She's an artist. And artists are emotional. They don't respond to pressure and spreadsheets. They respond to what they feel. Right now, she feels attacked and alone. That's why she's digging her heels in.
He leaned back in the booth, the picture of calm, confident reason. He had them. He had confirmed all their biases, validated all their frustrations, and presented himself as the only one with the unique insight to solve the problem. They were no longer wary. They were allies, listening to their new general outline the battle plan.
So the question is,
He said, his voice dropping, his gaze moving between the two of them.
how do we protect Amy from herself, secure your rightful place in Heartland's future, and save the ranch from financial ruin without starting an all-out war that could destroy your family for good?
Nathan's question, posed with the calm confidence of a chess master who sees the entire board, hung in the air. He had perfectly articulated their dilemma. They were trapped between their love for Amy, their fear for the ranch's future, and their own frustrated ambitions. Tim, never one for patience, leaned forward, his elbows on the table.
All right, Price, you've got our attention. What's the solution?
Nathan took a slow, deliberate sip of his coffee, letting the anticipation build.
The solution is a new business model for Heartland.
He began, his voice smooth and authoritative.
One that honors its past while securing its future. The plan I presented to Amy, the one she rejected, is the only viable path forward. It generates multiple, stable revenue streams, it leverages the ranch's untapped assets, and it would make the operation profitable within 3 years.
He tailored his pitch now, not to Amy's sentimental heart, but to their specific desires. He looked directly at Lou.
Lou, the corporate retreat package I designed could be run as a joint venture with Fairfield. It would create a synergy between the two businesses, driving high-end clientele to you and creating a massive, stable income source that would secure Fairfield's future for decades to come.
Lou's eyes widened slightly. She had been struggling with Fairfield's thin margins for years. The idea of a guaranteed high-end client pipeline was an incredibly tempting proposition. He then turned to Tim.
And Tim, the ecotourism development on the North Pasture. We're talking about unlocking the land's true market value, selling off a small, underutilized portion for a multi-million-dollar return that could be reinvested or used to finally give this family the financial security Jack's old-fashioned methods never could.
This was music to Tim's ears. It was exactly what he had been thinking all along.
That's all well and good,
Tim said, cutting to the chase.
but it's a fantasy. It all hinges on Amy, and she would never in a million years agree to any of it, so we're right back where we started.
Nathan held up a hand, a calm, knowing smile on his face.
Not necessarily. You're right, she won't agree to it if the suggestion comes from you. Right now, she sees you as the opposition. She needs to be guided by someone she trusts, someone who is on her side, legally and emotionally.
And who's that supposed to be?
She asked, her tone skeptical.
She barely trusts Caleb these days, and she certainly doesn't trust you after your dinner.
Her trust in me can be repaired.
He said with an unshakable confidence that was both impressive and unsettling.
I just need to be in a position where my advice isn't just a friendly suggestion. It needs to be the counsel of a partner, a permanent one.
He paused, letting them absorb the weight of his words before delivering the final, shocking piece of his plan.
I'm going to marry her.
The statement dropped onto the table with the force of a physical blow. Tim and Lou just stared at him, their mouths agape. Of all the solutions they had imagined, this was not one of them. Tim was the first to find his voice, a mixture of shock and disbelief.
You're going to what? You can't be serious. She practically threw you out of her life 2 nights ago. Feelings can change.
Nathan said calmly, not the least bit flustered. He leaned forward, his voice now a low, intimate, and intensely convincing murmur.
Tim, Lou, you both know I care for Amy. I have for a long time. My intentions toward her have always been serious. This crisis, this threat to her future, it just forces the timeline. It makes the need for a stable partnership more urgent.
He looked directly at Tim, man to man.
I was going to marry your daughter anyway. The fact that doing so now is the only way to save her from herself and to save your family's legacy is just a fortunate consequence.
He had framed the most audacious, manipulative power play as a noble act of love and necessity. He was not a schemer, he was a devoted partner stepping up in a time of crisis.
Think about it. Once I'm her husband, I'm family. I'm not just the neighbor with a business plan anymore. I'll have a legal right, a husband's right, to advise her on the estate, to guide her financial decisions. She will listen to me in a way she will never listen to you again. We can implement the plan, secure the ranch, and you will get your stake in its future, all under the guise of me being a loving, supportive husband.
He vehemently shook his head, a look of pure sincerity on his face.
This isn't about the assets for me. It's about building a life with Amy and Lindy. It's about giving that little girl the father figure she desperately needs and deserves. It's about making sure the woman I love is secure and happy. That's all I want.
The lie was so perfect, so complete. It was a work of art. He was offering them everything they wanted, wrapped in a package of romance and noble intentions. Tim and Lou sat in stunned silence, the sheer audacity of the plan leaving them speechless. Amy's entire future, the fate of the Heartland ranch, was being laid out on a sticky table in a diner booth while she was thousands of feet in the air, flying home with a heart full of a fragile, hopeful new perspective. Tim was the first to break the stunned silence. He let out a short, sharp bark of a laugh, a sound of pure, incredulous disbelief.
Marry her?
He said, shaking his head.
Are you out of your mind, Price? She won't even take your phone calls. You have a better chance of striking oil in Maggie's parking lot.
Nathan remained perfectly calm, his composure unshakable. He had anticipated this reaction. He looked at Tim, his expression patient, understanding.
Right now, she's angry. She feels betrayed, and she's lashing out. But Amy has a good heart, and more importantly, she's a mother. She saw her own daughter run away a few days ago on a desperate search for a father she can never have back. That little girl's pain, that is Amy's greatest weakness, and it's also her greatest strength.
He was dissecting her emotions with the precision of a surgeon, and it was a chilling thing to witness. Tim stared at him, his initial disbelief slowly beginning to morph into a kind of grudging respect. The sheer, cold-blooded audacity of the plan was something he could understand. It was the kind of bold, ruthless move he himself might have made in his younger days. Lou, however, was not so easily convinced. She looked at Nathan, her expression a mixture of horror and a kind of clinical fascination.
Nathan, this is insane,
She said, her voice low and steady.
You're talking about my sister's life, not a hostile takeover of a corporation. You can't just schedule a marriage like it's a business merger.
Why not?
He countered, his gaze shifting to her. It was a genuine question.
What is the alternative, Lou? Tell me. Do we let her run the ranch into bankruptcy, defaulting on every loan and ruining the family name? Or do we fight her? Do we hire lawyers, drag her into court, and spend the next 5 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars from the estate tearing each other to pieces in front of the entire town? An ugly public war that will destroy what's left of your family and bleed the legacy dry.
He leaned forward, his argument a cage of cold, inescapable logic.
Or do we handle this quietly, internally? I win back her trust, something I am very confident I can do. I give her the emotional support she's craving. I give her daughter the father figure she needs. We get married, and then, as her husband, I guide her toward making the sensible, profitable decisions that you and I both know are necessary. Everyone gets what they want. Amy is happy, Lindy is secure, the ranch is saved, and you both get the financial partnership you deserve. No lawyers, no public spectacle, just a quiet, elegant solution.
Tim, who had been listening intently, slammed his hand on the table, making the coffee cups jump.
He's right.
He said, his face alight with a sudden enthusiastic conviction.
Lou, he's right. It's the perfect plan. It's clean. We avoid a family war, and we get a competent man in charge of the whole damn operation. He already loves her. He's good with the kid. It solves everything.
He was completely sold. He saw Nathan not as a predator, but as the answer to all his problems. A sensible, ambitious man who could manage the ranch and, more importantly, manage his sentimental, impractical daughter.
Dad, you can't be serious.
She protested, but her voice lacked its usual force. The logic of Nathan's argument was a powerful poison, and it was working on her. The thought of a long, ugly legal battle, the cost, the public humiliation, it was a nightmare. Nathan was offering a way out, a morally questionable and thoroughly manipulative way out, but a way out nonetheless. She wrestled with herself, her pragmatic business sense at war with the last vestiges of her sisterly loyalty. She thought of her own daughters, of the financial security she had worked so hard to build for them. She thought of the insult of the will, the sting of being overlooked, and she thought of Amy, stubborn and emotional, leading them all toward a cliff edge. In her mind, she began to justify it. This wasn't a betrayal. It was a rescue mission, the lesser of two evils. She finally looked up, her expression a mask of grim, reluctant resolve. She had made her choice.
And you're sure you can do it? You can win her back?
The question was her surrender. A slow, confident smile spread across Nathan's face.
Absolutely.
Tim let out a triumphant laugh and slid out of the booth, extending his hand across the table to Nathan.
Well then, Price, welcome to the family.
Nathan stood and took his hand. The handshake was firm, a deal being sealed. A treacherous alliance formed over cold coffee in an empty diner. Lou watched them, a knot of guilt and ambition tightening in her stomach. They were three conspirators, their faces lit with varying degrees of triumph, resolve, and cool satisfaction, having just decided the fate of a woman who was, at that very moment, flying home to them with a heart full of a fragile, hopeful new perspective. The handshake lingered in the air, a silent, binding contract. Tim was beaming, a broad, triumphant grin spreading across his face. He clapped Nathan on the shoulder, a hearty, familiar gesture that was wildly out of place given their new and treacherous relationship.
This calls for a real drink, not this diner coffee.
He turned to Lou, his eyes alight with the thrill of the scheme.
Come on, Lou, let's leave our future son-in-law to his business. We've got some celebrating to do.
Lou managed a tight, thin-lipped smile. The guilt she had been suppressing was now a cold, heavy stone in the pit of her stomach, but she had come too far to turn back now. She had chosen a side. She had chosen what she believed was logic over loyalty.
It was a productive meeting, Nathan.
Her voice was formal, a businesswoman closing a difficult deal.
Keep us informed of your progress.
Of course,
Nathan said, his own smile polite and unreadable.
you'll be the first to know.
He watched them slide out of the booth and walk toward the door, a united front of misguided ambition. He analyzed them as they went. Tim, the emotional, short-sighted asset, easily manipulated by greed and ego, and Lou, the intelligent, pragmatic one, whose own ambition and resentment made her just as predictable. They were perfect instruments. He remained in the booth, watching through the large plate glass window as they got into Tim's truck. He saw them talking, Tim gesturing enthusiastically, Lou nodding, a look of grim resolve on her face. They believed they had just secured their future. The truck's engine roared to life, and it pulled out of the parking lot, its red taillights disappearing down the road. And then he was alone. The polite, concerned mask he had worn so perfectly for the past hour dissolved, not into a villainous sneer, but into a look of calm, neutral assessment. The emotional performance was over. Now he could think clearly. He took a slow sip of his now cold coffee. His internal monologue was not one of malice, but of cold, clear-eyed strategy. It was the voice of a man who saw the world as a series of assets to be managed and obstacles to be overcome. Phase 1, secure the board, successful. He considered Tim and Lou. Their emotional investment in the outcome was their primary liability, and therefore his primary leverage. Tim's greed was a simple lever to pull. Lou's pragmatism, her need to see herself as the smart one, was more complex, but just as exploitable. They thought they were partners in a new enterprise. They failed to understand their actual role. They were the temporary financing, the political capital needed to facilitate the real merger. His mind turned to the ultimate prize. It wasn't just about developing a few acres. That was the bait for Tim. The asset wasn't the land itself, but the brand. Heartland. It had immense untapped market value, an emotional goodwill that was commercially priceless. The family, with their messy grief and sentimental attachments, was an inefficient emotional impediment to maximizing that value. And at the center of it all was Amy, the controlling shareholder, the gatekeeper. His failed dinner had been a miscalculation, a flawed data point. He had underestimated the depth of her emotional resistance. His strategy had been sound, but his tactics needed refinement. A logical appeal was useless. The approach, therefore, must be emotional. Phase 2, re-engage the primary stakeholder. His apology on the ridge had been a successful test. She was receptive to contrition. She wanted to believe in his sincerity. The next steps would require a sustained campaign of emotional support. He would have to validate her role as protector, all while gently introducing the concepts of sustainable legacy management. He would have to become the man she needed him to be, a patient, understanding partner who respected her feelings but could also be relied on to handle the harsh realities she couldn't. He would help her solve her problems, the small ones, at first. A bill here, a supplier negotiation there. He would make himself indispensable. He would become her sole advisor, her only confidant, slowly replacing her family's influence with his own. The marriage was the endgame, the final legal consolidation of control. Once complete, Tim and Lou's advisory roles would become redundant and could be phased out. A clean, efficient absorption of all assets, it was the only logical outcome. He finally stood up, leaving a $10 bill on the table. He walked out of the diner and into the cool afternoon air. He got into his truck, the engine humming quietly to life. He looked up at the sky in the direction of the airport. He pictured Amy on the plane, hopeful, resolved, flying back to him. His face was impassive, his thoughts clear and precise. Her emotional state is a predictable variable. My support will be the catalyst. The outcome is inevitable. The war for Heartland would not be won with anger and arguments, it would be won with a gentle, patient, and utterly ruthless love.